Ladies and gentlemen, stop what you're doing because as of this morning, the United States of America is staring down the barrel of something we haven't seen since the darkest days of the Cold War. Russia has just fired off a nuclear warning. Yes, a direct threat aimed at Donald Trump's America. And in the same breath, President Trump has shocked the world with a move that nobody saw coming, telling NATO allies to shoot down Russian jets and signaling for the first time that long-range U.S. missiles could be on the table for the Ukraine. Now, this isn't theory, guys. This isn't speculation. This is happening right now. Now, NATO airspace is being violated. Russia is daring the West to respond. Eastern allies are begging Trump, do not pull the U.S. troops. And Trump, he is flipping the script on Putin himself, saying Ukraine could not only win the war, but could strike back harder than ever before. So, guys, today, we're going to go ahead and break down how Russia's nuclear threats, NATO's panic, and President Trump's new hardline stance, they're colliding in real time. We're also going to lay out why world leaders are now whispering about World War III, why Putin just dared Trump to make the next move, and why the next 48 hours may decide whether this is a bluff, brinkmanship, or maybe the start of something rather catastrophic. Now, folks, by the end of this video, you tell me, is Trump's strategy brilliant peace through strength, or are we now one trigger pull away from global war? Hit the like button, subscribe, guys. We have a lot to talk about. All right, right out the gate, I want to talk about the statement that has every headline screaming right now. Dmitry Medvedev, one of Putin's most loyal bulldogs, he went public with a threat that was unlike anything we've heard in decades. He didn't just talk about missiles. He didn't just threaten Ukraine. He told the United States of America, Donald Trump's America, that Russia has nuclear weapons so advanced that, quote, a bomb shelter won't protect against them. Now, think about that for a second. That is Russia directly daring Washington, D.C. Not Cold War theory, not some vague deterrence. This was a direct nuclear threat from Russia aimed squarely at the president of the United States. Now, this is a move that was clearly designed to terrify, to intimidate, and to warn that the Kremlin believes that it can outpace America's defenses. Now, this is not saber rattling. This is escalation. Pure and simple, folks. But here's the spark that lit the fire. Vladimir Zelensky, standing at the United Nations, told Kremlin officials they better know where their nearest bomb shelter is, because if Trump gives Ukraine long-range American weapons, Kiev will use them. That's not empty rhetoric. That is a sitting president telling Russia we will hit back harder than ever. And he didn't stop there. In fact, Zelensky, he went even further. He went after NATO, blasting them for what he called a very weak response. His message: shoot down everything. Every drone, every jet, every missile that violates Allied skies. And this is the defiance that provoked Moscow's retaliation. Russia couldn't just let that stand. No. So Medvedev, he comes out with his chilling nuclear warning, raising the stakes for the entire West. Now, the most dangerous thing here about Medicare, it's not the big bills. It's actually the small costs, the small hidden costs that are adding up quietly every single month. They drain your savings. This is why I partner with Chapter, folks. They expose those hidden Medicare costs before they rob you. Now, one of our viewers, she said, Chapter saved me from death by 1,000 cuts in my Medicare plan. And folks, we're getting notifications that there are multiple plans that are changing. There are doctors that are no longer going to be covered under certain Medicare plans. So what you want to do is make sure that you are not falling victim to one of these circumstances. It is a completely free call to Chapter, and they can verify all this for you. Now, let me ask you, are you just going to go ahead and let that silent killer just keep draining you? Or are you going to join the majority who have already stopped it? Now, most people are calling the phone number right there at the bottom of your screen, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. The phone number is 909-563-8279. Now, we need to talk about what happened next. President Donald J. Trump, he stepped up to the microphone at the United Nations and he sent shockwaves around the globe. He didn't hedge. He didn't whisper. He said it loud and clear. If Russian jets or drones enter NATO airspace, shoot them down. That is the president of the United States calling for direct engagement with Russian aircraft. And the Kremlin's response? Oh, go ahead. Shoot one down. See what happens. Folks, do you understand the tension here? That's not bluffing language. That's Russia daring NATO to cross a line that could ignite a direct U.S.-Russia clash. The question now that's kind of hanging over the world is, will NATO act or will they blink? But Trump didn't stop there. Behind closed doors, reports confirm he's signaling something unthinkable just months ago, okay? Lifting restrictions on Ukraine using U.S.-made long-range weapons, ATACMS missiles, Tomahawk weapons, capable of striking deep into Russian territory. Now, this is a massive policy shift. You guys remember President Trump, he once warned Zelensky he was gambling with World War III. But now he's hinting that the leash may be off. In fact, if Ukraine gets the green light to launch American missiles into Russia, we're no longer talking about a border war. We're talking about strikes inside the heart of Russian military infrastructure. Now imagine the implications of this. Oil refineries, airfields, even command centers, all suddenly within reach. This is why this moment is being called one of the most dangerous in modern history. Nuclear threats from Moscow on one side, you have a US president saying shoot them down, and maybe strike inside of Russia on the other side. This is a collision course here. Now, while the rhetoric is flying left and right, the skies, they tell the real story. In just the last 2 weeks, Russian drones have crossed into Poland, Romania, even lingered over to Estonia for nearly an hour. Denmark has shut down airports after mysterious drone swarms. And even closer to home, US fighter jets scrambled 9 separate times this year to intercept Russian bombers testing Alaskan airspace. Guys, this is the USA that they're testing there. This isn't theory. This isn't what if. These are violations happening almost daily now. NATO has triggered Article 4 consultations, the stage where allies get together and pretty much say, hey, we have a problem. And let me remind you, Article 5, this is the one that launches the war. Folks, we are one step away. Okay, so with these provocations that are piling up, you've got NATO's eastern flank. It's sounding the alarm. Estonia, Lithuania, Romania, they're all pleading directly with President Trump. Do not pull U.S. troops out of Europe. Why? Because as Estonia's foreign minister said, Putin only respects what he sees, not plans, not promises, not protocols. He respects American boots on the ground. They're terrified that if U.S. troops leave, Putin will push harder, test more, and maybe roll right past Ukraine. Now, here's the real situation here, guys. Trump has campaigned on prioritizing America first, securing the homeland, and questioning endless deployments. So now he faces this brutal calculation. Does he keep tens of thousands of Americans stationed in Europe, or pull back and risk Putin seeing weakness? That is the knife's edge that Trump is walking on right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, NATO and Moscow are already at war. Not might be, not could be, already at war. And then came the Bolivian president standing before the world, warning that humanity stands at the brink of a global war. His words, quote, "The peace that still exists could vanish overnight," end quote. Now, leaders around the world are whispering that we are closer to a third world war than at any point since 1962. Now, that's the atmosphere that Trump is navigating right now. World leaders saying it's already begun. Russia saying war is the only path forward. The stakes have never been higher, folks. And what's Trump's response? Well, he's not mincing words anymore. Just this week, President Trump said flat out, Putin is killing people for no reason whatsoever, and that Russia's war has badly damaged its reputation. Now, remember, this is the same Trump who once held out hope for brokering peace. That tone is gone. Now it's just raw criticism. He is painting Putin as reckless, weakened, and desperate. Now, for NATO allies, this shift is reassuring. For Putin, it's humiliating. And let me tell you guys, when an authoritarian feels cornered and humiliated, history shows that's when they're the most dangerous. That's the razor's edge that we're standing on today. Now, here's where things go from dangerous to terrifying. Reports out of London show leaked Russian documents proving Moscow has been supplying Beijing with critical military tech, gear designed for airborne invasions and amphibious assaults. Translation, Russia is helping China prepare for a move on Taiwan. And intelligence insiders are warning if China pulls the trigger, it won't just be a war in Asia. They've already embedded cyber warfare units inside of America's critical infrastructure, power grids, ports, communication lines. The plan is chilling. Launch cyber attacks here at home to distract and cripple the US while China invades Taiwan. So picture this, guys. Russia escalating in Europe, China striking in Asia, and America's lights going out at home. That's the two-front nightmare scenario that the Pentagon has been warning about for years. And right now, NATO sits on the edge of that nightmare. Eastern allies, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, they're all demanding a stronger response. Shoot them down. Close the skies. Stop letting Russia humiliate us. But Western capitals like Paris and Berlin, they're hesitating. France's foreign minister even admitted that they probably wouldn't shoot down a Russian plane even if it crossed NATO airspace. Now imagine that. Two NATO members staring at the same threat, but one says fire and the other one says hold. And Trump, he cut through all of the double talk. If Russian jets cross your skies, shoot them down, period. That's the president of the United States daring NATO to back his words with action. The question is, will they? Or will NATO fracture under pressure the very moment that Putin is daring them to act? Now, let's go ahead and dig into the part that most Americans don't see on the nightly news, the energy war. Because while missiles and jets dominate headlines, the money fueling this conflict is flowing through oil and gas pipelines. And President Trump already knows that. For months, he's been hammering Europe, cut it off completely, stop buying Russian oil, stop buying Russian gas, and starve the Kremlin's war machine of its lifeblood. And the numbers tell the story. Europe has slashed purchases by nearly 80%. Now that's progress, but here's the problem. Two holdouts remain, Hungary and Slovakia. They're still hooked. They're still sending cash to Moscow every single day. And President Trump has been blunt. If America is going to hold the line with troops on the ground, missiles in the air, and sanctions in place, Europe has to hold the line with energy, period. Because as long as Putin has those oil and gas dollars flowing in, he's got the cash to build drones and buy weapons and keep the war going. But here's where it gets dangerous. Europe is divided. Eastern allies like Estonia and Lithuania, they're saying, we'll suffer the pain. We'll cut it off, just end Putin's leverage. But Western allies drag their feet, worried about riots in the street, worried about energy bills soaring, worried about political backlash at home. And that division, that hesitation, Putin is watching it, exploiting it, and betting the West won't have the stomach to pay the price. This is why sanctions alone haven't stopped him. It's why President Trump's pressure campaign is turning heads, because he's calling out the weak spots, forcing Europe to choose security or comfort. And folks, history shows weakness only invites aggression. So let's go ahead and step back, and I want to take in the full picture here, because as of today, we're living through a moment that could define the century. Russia has fired off direct nuclear warnings, not just to Ukraine, but to Donald Trump's United States. NATO airspace has been violated repeatedly. Poland, Romania, Estonia, even Alaska. President Trump has stunned the world by flipping his stance. Once cautious about escalation, he's now saying, give Ukraine the long-range missiles, lift the restrictions, let them strike inside Russia if needed. And on top of that, he told NATO allies point blank, if Russian jets cross your skies, shoot them down. Meanwhile, Eastern Europe is practically shouting, America, don't leave us. Don't pull back your troops. They know Putin only respects American strength that he can see. And yet, Western Europe hesitates, divided over energy, divided over costs, divided over risk. And hovering above it all is the fear that nobody wants to admit out loud. World War III. Sergei Lavrov at the UN, he said it straight. NATO and Moscow are already at war. The Bolivian president declared the world is on the brink. Analysts whisper the same thing. One miscalculation, one drone shot down, one missile fired across the wrong line, and the fire ignites. Now, imagine this scenario. A Russian jet crosses into Polish airspace tomorrow morning. A NATO pilot, emboldened by Trump's call to action, locks on and fires. That jet explodes. The Kremlin goes live on state TV. War has begun. Putin points to the nuclear button. NATO scrambles emergency sessions. China, already preparing with Russia, decides the distraction is perfect and makes its move on Taiwan. And at home, cyber attacks light up America's power grids, water systems, airports, chaos spreads. Is that paranoia? Or is that the exact chain of events our enemies are setting up right now? Now, folks, the truth is no one really knows. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous. So here we are. Nuclear threats on the table, NATO divided, Trump doubling down on strength, and a world holding its breath. The next 48 hours could reveal whether it's all bluff and posturing or whether the fuse is already lit. And that's the cliff that we stand on. One spark could tip us into history's next great war. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave you with this. Is Trump's strategy of peace through strength the only thing holding the line? Or have we already reached the point where strength itself invites the fight? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below, guys. Hit like, subscribe. I'm gonna keep bringing you the truth as soon as it breaks, because folks, this story is not slowing down. It's only heating up.